So welcome. It's nice to see you in Dubai.
Yeah, Martin, thank you. Always good to be here and always good to see you.
Okay, so look, everybody's talking about, oh my God, we're going to have to know where our diamonds come from. Do you think that's actually going to happen?
I think it has to happen. I can't see a world where in the next 2 to 5 years where we think as an industry we will not be able to provide, even at a basic level, some sort of substantive proof as to where something not only comes from, but where it was manufactured. And I think whether that be because consumers and brands are going to want to protect themselves and they're going to want to know, or because the regulators are going to come in and tell us to do it, I just can't see a world where this doesn't happen.
When you say substantive proof, what does that mean?
So I think that is the heart, the fundamental question at the heart of everything that we've been doing and everything we've been talking about for the last few years, and a lot of where the debate comes from is what is good enough? What is enough to say that you feel comfortable? So from our perspective at Tracer, we do think it's a journey. We don't think that it's something that you can land at the golden answer. So substantive proof, I think, is at the heart of everything we've been discussing. And I think that's what's created a lot of debate, but also confusion in the diamond industry is what does it mean? And for us, it's a bit of a journey, and it's a concept of good enough for today and getting better over time. But really, you can see it in various different platforms taking various different approaches. So from a Tracer perspective, we believe in a couple of things. We believe that you have to involve all of the members of the value chain, or it doesn't make sense, and that's why we begin at the beginning. We begin at the source. We've added additional complexity to ourselves because we believe you need to use technology to scan and register rough diamonds. To be fair, that's hard, that's difficult, so that's taken longer. And we're okay with companies that want to look at an easier solution in the short term, but we believe that's the long-term answer. And then I think that midstream needs to be governed by a combination of things. I think that in the future, technology proving the polish from rough is fundamental. And actually, the diamond industry has so much data on diamonds that I don't think that's actually too much of a problem. But in the interim, you're welcome to use third-party auditing standards like De Beers' Pipeline Integrity, the RJC Provenance Claim, and a few others that are out there. And really that journey is important because our belief is that the technology will be the necessary substantive reason. Why scanning matters is when you're in places like Dubai, parcels are bought, they're mixed and they're sold. It's only with technology that you can match those two things back together again. Otherwise, you can end up with a stack of 700 pieces of paper telling you where all these different things came from. We have a good foundation in the Kimberley process. I think from a rough point of view, at least you've got a certificate from a country that tells you that that's where the country comes from. But we definitely need to bring more technology into that. So if you look at it from a consumer point of view, I think they're going to trust the brand, and the brand is then going to want to protect itself, and so they're going to decide what their substantive measure is. And then if you ask the government, I think they're playing around with the sort of nodes and certification mechanisms with declarations, and it's getting a little bit sort of evolving, but I think there's still a little bit more work to do to decide as an industry what do we believe is good enough as a substantive level that we can start there and then we can build on that going forward.
So we're thinking like this, like basically rough is scanned at the individual stone level. Once we understand that this stone is coming from this mine, so it would be actually scanned at the mine or by the mining company somehow. That data would then be put into your blockchain. So now we know we have a rough diamond. Stop right there. I can tell you this rough diamond comes from this mine, 100%, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like everything in this conversation, it really depends on how the diamonds are sold. So you take De Beers as a good example. We got 2.8 million individually scanned rough diamonds on the platform. But as you know, De Beers aggregates their diamonds. So those diamonds are sold in Botswana, and that's the logical point of scanning. So there is a degree of trust that De Beers will tell you that the diamonds come from these mines, and they will then say that I'm loading these diamonds in this box onto the platform. You could use Mountain Province as an example. They trade through Bonus in Antwerp. So there's scanning equipment in Bonus, and they will do the scanning, and they will make sure that that pipeline is integral. So there is a degree of, there's a lot of technology, and there's there's RJC audits and memberships and all of these things, but there is a degree of trust that that company is telling you where the diamond comes from. But I think that's okay because it's the company that is putting themselves on the line to say, this box, scanned individually, is a De Beers box, and I'm telling you that I've scanned it and I know it comes from one of these 4 countries, although we did announce recently that we're moving down to single country of origin, but it'll be them that be able to make that claim. And what's really important about that, and we've worked for years to make sure that this is available, is there's 3 different companies that can make high-speed scanning equipment. We've tested this now across multiple different technologies, so it remains agnostic. You're not forced to use a certain technology. But then we know that almost every single diamond, especially in these higher size ranges, they go on some form of a piece of hardware to do planning. And so we can take the scan that is then done in the country, whether that's in Antwerp or in New York or in Israel or in India, and we can match it back to the country of origin. And so then whether it was traded, whether it was mixed in Dubai and added to different parcels, it's a really good starting point because we can just bridge that origin already in one go. And I can't see a world, especially in the next couple of years, where that isn't the first step of a technology solution for traceability.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here, just to make sure people can understand this stuff, is you have a mining company.
Yep.
The mining company has a mine and says this rough diamond came from this mine.
Yep.
They scan it.
Yep.
The mining company or someone acting on behalf of the mining company scans it. And now we know what the rough is.
Exactly.
We know where the rough came from. The next step is the rough then wanders around, maybe sold by 20 different people, and then it ends up in a diamond manufacturing facility.
Yep.
Now, the diamond manufacturing facility can then match when the diamond enters into their diamond manufacturing ERP.
Yep.
And they can say, okay, this is the same rough diamond. Maybe even he scanned it with someone else. I understand we have artificial intelligence software that then compares the two scans. So now the diamond factory is sitting there, okay, I have a piece of rough diamond.
Yep.
I know which diamond mine it came from. Now, in the diamond manufacturing center, we're taking that diamond and we're starting to saw it, cut it, cleave it, whatever. And every time we do an operation on the diamond, or maybe say 4 channel steps in the case of Sarin, we're able to say, okay, this was the manufacturing process. I can now link back through our software, this polished diamond came from this rough diamond. And then maybe the final scan is of the polished diamond, which uniquely identifies the polished diamond. And now we have an unquestionable trace from the mine straight through to a finished, polished diamond based on scanning technology that works to 1,000th of a millimeter or whatever have you, with also some imaging of inclusions and 3-dimensional diagramming and stuff like that. And now all of this sits on the blockchain. So someone can go into the blockchain, if they have permission, and then they can see exactly where this diamond came from and even all the processes. Certainly an auditor can do that, right? So now we know where a diamond came from. It's a polished diamond, and we know where it was, the rough for that polished diamond was mined. Is that correct?
Essentially, yeah. Essentially, you've summed it up pretty well. I think in the midstream, I think there's still a choice today whether you go what we call objective verification the whole way through, so using all of that planning data and putting it through. And I think that is where the world will land. I have absolutely no doubt. Or you use the auditing route. It says load all of that data up onto the platform and a third-party auditor will check that it's right. I think in the short term, those two solutions can live in parallel.
So wait, I need to see the first solution. So the auditing, I understand.
Okay.
What's that other solution that you're talking about?
So the other solution is, so think the way we look at it is you've got, you put the foundational platform in place, and at the end of the day, what you're doing is getting data loaded up onto that platform. If you don't have the data, there's not much that you can do. So if you have a blockchain, which there's a bit of a nuance on the blockchain in that it hashes data onto the blockchain and it does all the transactions and the data is stored in separate places, and we can go into that detail if
That's
necessary.
blockchain technology that
But
could
it's
be used
blockchain.
for in all kinds of areas.
All
right?
kinds of different things. So route one, as you said, which you understand quite clearly, is more auditing. So you've got that, you've got the ERP data, you can do comparisons, you can check it, you can send an auditor in, they can look at your factory, you can see when diamonds were checked in and out, etc. And that's traditionally the diamond industry is doing that, has been doing that for a long time, for decades, in fact. That's a very good foundational base to work off of. The sort of evolution of that, or the secondary channel that you could use, is what we call objective verification. So similar as to you described when we scan a rough diamond from a producer and we scan a rough diamond at the manufacturer, and we have algorithms that will take these two things and compare them to a percentage accuracy, et cetera, and match them. You could do the same thing from a sword diamond back to the rough. You can look at the planning of the plan inside, and you can load all of this data up and use algorithms to check the two things together. The useful thing of that is that's a much faster and more scalable solution. It happens more in real time. Not exactly real time, but more in real time, rather than maybe an audit that'll come 6 months later or 12 months later. That technology, though, requires that, whether you're using Lexis or you're using Sarin technology, that you can then get that data and load it up to a provider to do the rough to polished matching. We believe that rough to rough, which is what we're doing at scale at the moment, and rough to polished is probably the future of where we need to go, because we have all the data already. We use planning equipment. And as long as we're allowing manufacturers to be agnostic on the choice of technology, then it doesn't really matter and you can do the matching. So I think as we've seen, a year or two ago, the idea of rough matching and scanning was a bit early on. I think we're now seeing that the rough to polished piece is what's going to come next, and it'll probably come quite quickly.
So that's pretty cool. And so now we go into a bunch of other questions. Was this a mine from Russia? Was this a mine from, I don't know, Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
And so now we start to think, because we have this ability, now we can start looking at other questions that maybe heretofore weren't around, which is to start to grade the social responsibility or the level that we would like to think about. What is a good mine?
Yeah, exactly.
And what is a good diamond manufacturing facility? Do they have good ventilation? Are the labor conditions correct? And so now this opens up another opportunity for being able to segment your markets and say, okay, diamonds from Botswana, fantastic. Roads, schools, hospitals, love that stuff. Diamonds from Zimbabwe, well, we don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so this idea of being able to segment markets, is this something that Tracer is going to look at also in terms of that? You're going to leave that for other people like Rapaport?
Yeah. So there's a lot there to unpack. So I think in the first instance, I think we need to be very clear that that already happens. So there are a lot of retailers, a lot of brands that have their own sourcing criteria, and you need to meet that criteria. And so some will buy from certain countries, and some won't buy from certain countries. Some will buy from certain mining companies, and some won't. Some will only buy from certain manufacturers that meet a BPP or an RJC standard, and some that won't. So I think we must remember that the diamond industry actually has been doing this for a very long time. The difference is the sort of the concept of a system that allows you to make sure that that data is not lost. So people see it maybe as an added, an added layer of complexity and work. But actually, if you think about a traded De Beers box, we're in Dubai, it happens all the time. You buy a De Beers box, you then trade it off to somebody else. In the world where a certain brand is looking for a certain box from a certain manufacturer, etc., if that provenance is lost, that box can't go into that brand anymore. Whereas if you put traceability platforms in place, you can maintain that provenance, see the rough-to-rough matching thing. So the first thing is that already happens. There is definitely tiers of manufacturers and tiers of retailers who provide in different markets. If you add the transparency and the trust to that, which is what platforms like Tracer aim to bring, it does make that a lot easier. It makes it a lot more fluid in terms of the way that you do it. And then you raise a very interesting point is, well, is there an opportunity to provide the trading of those goods on that particular data point? And will Tracer do it, or will we leave it to Rapnet? And our answer is, and I think you can see it in the way we work, is whoever can provide it at the best way, we will provide the data, because it's not our data. So if a manufacturer is using the Tracer platform, and they can do this today, and they want to make it known that these diamonds that they're listing on Rapnet are on Tracer, they can do that, and we have our APIs connected to make that work. Equally, they can put it on an IDEX or a Uni or any of these other platforms. And to be fair, the person and the company that can innovate the fastest should enter into that space and should win. Tracer's job is to make sure that the manufacturers can share their data with whoever they want to be able to acknowledge that flow. And people have come to me and said, "Oh, I'm really worried because now we're going to have to, certain diamonds going in different directions." And that's what the diamond industry's been doing for 100 years. We are traders at heart. We trade diamonds to the best place, and that's how we eke out value. And so, in my view, the ability to then have Origin, RJC memberships, BPP members, etc., so that diamond now has those data points, just empowers the traders to do what they've been doing for 100 years anyway.
So like we were saying, the fifth C, cut clarity, was actually certification. Say GIA. But now we're talking country, something along the line of country, even a specific mine within a country. So what we're doing is we're shedding a tremendous amount of light and transparency on the polished diamond. We know a tremendous amount about it. And then slicing and dicing the level of social responsibility, that's another story for brands.
Exactly.
That's for the people that are selling it.
They can decide. And I think the important thing there is, how do we create standards that are inclusive, that bring people on the journey to get better, rather than making them gating criteria that exclude you completely? And I think that's a really important piece of work for the diamond industry, because obviously the larger manufacturers, those with sort of more resources, etc., they can meet certain standards a bit easier, and they have to, because they've got relationships. But there are lots of smaller players in the industry that need a way of doing that. And I think working with a lot of the industry bodies that exist, their job is to help raise that bar, and Tracer will just provide the transparency of that story against that standard. And then to your point, I think it's going to be more than that, though, surely, because at some point in time we're going to be talking about carbon, and we're going to talk about water and sustainability data, and then you're going to want to, certain brands will pay a premium for diamonds that have a lower carbon footprint because it impacts their scope 3 emissions, etc. And that's normal. That's just what happens. But that doesn't mean that there's no market for a diamond that doesn't necessarily have all of those 5 stars. Maybe it's a 4-star or a 3-star. I have no doubt that there will be a market for all of these diamonds. if we can continue to stimulate the demand for diamonds in the next 5 years, because that's going to be fundamental.
Well, I think that the idea of segmentation drives added profitability and added opportunity to make more money. Imagine the world in the old days before the GIA and everything that was VS2, VVS2 and better, all was lumped together as collection clean and didn't look that high level. And now when you break those segmented gradings down, you get opportunities for added value. And I think we're going to see that in terms of the socialization or the social cost of it. But you mentioned something important about the small dealer. So in RapNet, we're running, 1.8 million diamonds worth $8.5 billion. Now, when those diamonds get tagged with a certain level of transparency, that we say, okay, this came from this mine or this country, now you have a story to tell. So there's another aspect of this, which is the storytelling. Because with Tracr, people will be able to actually trace or match that polished diamond with that rough story. This diamond made the world a better place because of this. Or this diamond was manufactured in this factory that then provided opportunities for their employees. So this now opens a whole world of marketing, a whole world of added value, which may not have existed without Tracr. So I think that's something the industry is going to be looking at in terms of the story. I know that they've already tried to sell the story. I don't know how much that sells. I mean, do you think there's money in that? Do you think there's profits in the story? I think the first thing before even Tracr was, I want to tell the story. And then I'm going to tell you it came from here and there, and they had some auditors, and they didn't have blockchain, right? And it didn't really, I don't think that it's really caught on that much.
Yeah.
You know, people want to buy the diamond. They want to get engaged. They want to take her out for dinner and whatever.
Yep.
And they're not thinking about the whole story so much. But I'm wondering, how do you feel about that storytelling?
Yeah, so I feel quite strongly about storytelling specifically. So we can look at a world where provenance, origin, ethical supply chain, etc. is a right to play, and I think whichever way you look at it, I think that's where the world is going. Whether that be for diamonds or something else, I think that's just where the world is going. But there is another side of that, and it was what you're describing, which is we have for decades tried to create things that tell a story that is unique to a diamond at the point of sale. Now, category marketing, which is a diamond is forever, etc., was always applying to the whole of the category, whereas the ability to tell a sort of a hyper-personalized story about an individual diamond is interesting. I think the reason over the last sort of decade or 2 decades why that concept hasn't caught on very well is it's quite difficult to tell all of that in a rich, meaningful way very quickly and easily in a very short selling cycle. You got 90 seconds or something to convince somebody that this is the diamond. And I think that's where the digital technology is important. So you've mentioned everything we've discussed here, right? So algorithms and matching and RJC, BPP, mining, auditing, that's quite a complicated thing to kind of bring across. And the difference is with digital that you can see almost everywhere else is the ability to hyper-personalize that story becomes important. So depending on who you are at the point of sale at that time, there is a wealth of story that you can tell. The key challenge is finding the right story for the right consumer to be able to sell that thing. And some of the nice examples are maybe we build a Botswana collection because now we know where all they come from, we know what they look like, there's a bit of a story around Botswana. The particular person who comes into that story is interested in wildlife and is interested in natural conservation, is interested in these things, then great. There are diamonds that are discovered in the ocean, and we sometimes shy away from the concept of diamonds that are mined in inverted commas in an ocean because there's this link to deep sea mining. But in fact, diamond mining is not deep sea mining; it's the furthest thing from deep sea mining, and a lot of money goes into investment in renewable projects in the area, in water conservation, etc. And if you're interested in marine and that sort of thing, then maybe there's a diamond for you there. But historically, it would be very difficult to sort of page through a 6-page book and find the right page and show the story, and then you're like, but that's not specific to my diamond. Whereas in the new world, you take a GIA certificate, for example, with our collaboration with GIA, you'll have provenance at the bottom of the certificate. You scan the QR code, it'll go to a story. You can then go through that and go right into the details of a unique story and then tailor the story for the consumer. And whether that's at a brand level, at a collection level, or an individual sale level, I think that's incredibly powerful, especially in a world where consumers have a huge amount of choice. They not only natural diamonds, but lab-grown diamonds. They have a huge amount of choice in experiences and technology, etc. Those that are environmentally conscious, you can make the point that actually a 1 carat natural polished diamond has the same water consumption as about 3 pairs of jeans. How many natural diamonds do you buy in your life? How many jeans do you buy in your life? Like it's a non-starter in the conversation. The challenge for us is we have this technology. We have it, 500,000 polished diamonds on the platform that can tell you the individual story of that diamond, where it came from, the unique impact of not just the mining origin, but also the manufacturing origin in India or in Antwerp. How do we get the people at the last mile to be able to tell that story? How do we link it to social media that we're driving the right narrative? It isn't the solution, but it's definitely part of how we're going to shift really what is a declining demand trend. We need to use it to do that. Otherwise, we're not going to be successful, I don't think, in the next few years.
I think at some level we have to be careful because instead of selling the diamond, you sell the story and you confuse the consumer, but everybody can do whatever they like, okay?
It's the flexibility that's important.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. We're not saying that. So, for example, what percentage of natural diamonds, certified diamonds sold in the US or on a GI certificate, as an example, GI or IGI, whichever one, it doesn't mean that certificate is front and center of the selling process.
Right.
But it could be. So if you have a particular consumer that comes in and goes, well, how do I know that this diamond is the diamond you're telling me? They pull out the certificate and they show the certificate. But they don't lead with a certificate. They do it as needed. And there's a choice there. Is it a GI certificate, a different certificate? Is there a brand representation there, etc.? All we're saying is there's a toolbox now, a digital toolbox that the retailer has access to that has solved 10 problems on the way to get there for regulatory reasons, for supply chain risk reasons, for all these other reasons. You have it anyway, so put it at the front there and let them use it if they need to. As you say, it's not about the story. It's not about putting blockchain and technology and scanning and algorithms in front of the sales process, but it's about having it in your back pocket, because if that consumer is going to walk out and going to go buy something else because they don't feel particularly good about maybe the impact of diamonds, have we given the salesperson everything that they need to be able to change that person's mind?
It's really important. So what we're really looking at here is something that you have in your back pocket. You have your brand, it's your store, or if it's a bigger brand, and then everybody knows you're buying stuff from me, it's kosher. It's good, no problem. And then if they say, how do I know? You say, oh, here, boom, 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 boom. But it's sort of like subtle in the background. So you're not necessarily always taking it out and saying, ooh, here it came from Botswana, here, this and that.
Exactly.
You're trusting me that I'm selling you a beautiful kosher diamond. And then if you ask, why did you say it was kosher?
Yep.
I'm not BSing you. I have the proof to back it up. Here you go. And we see it. Now, is there an opportunity are there a lot of blockchains going to be doing this? I mean, what's going to happen with the blockchain story? Are we going to be seeing a lot of different blockchains?
So just to close off on your last point that I think is really important is I think there's 2 steps to this. So at the point of sale, you're 100% right. It's in the back pocket. You use it when you need it. You've got a very short period of time to convince the person. But I think what we're not talking a lot about is how do you get the people in the store? So a lot of what happens, I think, today is that the people that are coming into the store, they're really going to buy a diamond. I think the challenge is they may buy lab grown and they may overpay. But it's a choice between the two, and that's something that happens at the point of sale. But if you're walking into the door, into a jeweler, you're kind of where we want you to be already. And so that's good. Now it's just about, sort of better sales, etc. But if you've got the iPhone store and you've got a jewelry store next to each other, how do we drive people into the jewelry store? Because if they go to the iPhone store and they buy the next iPhone rather than buying a piece of jewelry, that's the diamond industry not doing its job. And I think that in the new world of social media, those consumers, that's where they get their information from. And if we have digitized the information in such a way that it's consumable, we should be using that in the marketing aspect to go, did you know all of these things and this and this and this? We should be nudging you because it'll get them into the store. And then by all means, if you need to use it, etc. But I think we're missing the fact that origin and provenance and that should be part of the marketing story to drive more feet into retailers. And that, for me, is the future of category marketing. Not the whole of it, because it's not all about traceability and origin, but definitely a very big part of it. And then on the blockchain side, I think the diamond industry fascinates me because it's an industry that 3 years ago didn't care about blockchain, didn't want to talk about blockchain. And all of a sudden now we're blockchain experts in the diamond industry because it's been, it's been kind of bandied about quite a bit. Will we have lots of blockchains? I don't think blockchain is the issue. And I think that, what Tracr purports is we just want to make sure we're managing that thing we described, rough into polished, and it's there. If you want to work on you want a digital product passport in the downstream and you want to build your own blockchain, by all means. The manufacturer or the retailer, they have access to Tracr, they can take that data and they can push it into your platform. I've got no problem whatsoever. We don't want to hold and control data. That's not our job. We're there to service it. Does it help the industry to have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 blockchains that are managing the kind of rough piece and the rough to polished piece? I think that's complicated, and I think the manufacturers are then dealing with too many things. And so if we can interoperate and allow people to flow, it's a lot easier. But in your example, do we really want a diamond that's just been split to go half on Tracer and then hop off onto another platform and go non-polished? That's going to get too complicated to manage. So I think blockchain serves a certain purpose. I do think there is potential downstream opportunity in tokenization and NFTs and that, but that's a long way off. If there are innovative companies in the diamond industry that want to do that, by all means take data off of Tracer and do it. But I don't think what we need is 1,000 blockchains trying to manage 1,000 different parts of the value chain, because it's just far more complicated than it needs to be, and we have to simplify it. And I think we mustn't overplay the use of blockchain because it's just one piece of the pie. We've already spoken about algorithms and AI and the matching of that. We've spoken about ERP data and APIs. There's a lot that comes into a true traceability platform. Blockchain is just a percentage of that.
So if I'm going to be doing an NFT for my diamond, it's interesting. I mean, how does that fit in here with this whole, blockchain story? I mean, imagine that the government of Botswana wants to capture some of the added value at retail, has an NFT locked into the blockchain, and then when the retailer sells it, there's a certain percentage of the revenue that goes back to the mine. I mean, this sounds miserably futuristic, okay? But is that something that's a danger where, people are looking at a lot of the technology and they're saying, holy cow, is this going to reduce my profit margin? It's going to increase my cost. Maybe it will, but that's an interesting question too. So, but I'm just thinking, this new technology, is it dangerous for the profitability of the independent jeweler?
Yeah, I don't think so. So, and NFTs is an interesting one. I mean, in the first instance, I think let's not kid ourselves. The NFT boom that happened a little while ago, I think that kind of came and went, and it's kind of calmed down a little bit. So, in that respect, I don't think anybody's dying to go and tokenize everything and NFT everything. There is, however, you can't use blockchain and not think about the downstream possibility of doing NFTs. I think there's a couple of things that I've learned in this process, and that example is a really good example. The miner is going to create an NFT that the retailer is then going to sell and going to share a percentage back. Like, in that statement, it's not impossible, but at the end of the day, the diamond is owned by the retailer. The data is owned by the retailer. So if they're going to get locked into an NFT contract by the miner, they just won't use it. They'll use something else. And so that's where Trace's view of, like, the data is your data. Like, you have it all the way to the end. If the miner wants to partner with a new downstream proposition and wants to do that, then yes, the technology can support a really clever way of doing that, which may have been useful in the old days of a forever mark or something like that when that technology didn't exist. But it has to be net value creating or people won't use it. So you're never going to be able to force them down the line that says, like, every time you sell a diamond on Tracer, a percentage of this must go back to, it just wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't land where it needs to land. And at the end of the day, there has to be value for the retailer to provide that to the consumer. If the consumer's not going to pay $1 extra for their NFT, there's no dollar to be had and there's no money to be shared. And so, maybe in the future there's something there. And I do like personally the concept of, if you could imagine, De Beers created a Diamond is Forever. They were sort of the onset to the market, etc. Imagine if De Beers had some relationship with every diamond they've ever sold, ever. That's an inordinate number of diamonds that, as you always say, are coming back onto the market very soon. We'd have a relationship with them. So I don't think that's how it's going to play out. But imagine if we are digitally tagging all the diamonds we're selling today, that in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, when those diamonds come back, we have a relationship with them in terms of the retailer who sold them. They can bring them back again. We can buy them back. We can maintain that provenance story. I think the diamond industry has something far more powerful to talk about, which is truly that a diamond is forever in terms of the knowledge of all of those things is maintained. And I don't know if that'll be NFT, because maybe there'll be a different technology that comes on the back of it. But there's definitely something about the point beyond the purchase and the relationship with that and all of those things. Because I think if we were celebrating pre-loved diamonds or heirloom diamonds or whatever the good term you want to use, if we were celebrating the fact that these things are truly forever, and is that not intrinsically valuable in itself, I think that would be supporting the natural diamond industry a lot more. But I don't think we should be bandying about NFT as the solution to the problem. It's that intrinsic value that I think is interesting.
Yeah, it could go the other way. You could say to someone, if you sell my diamond, I'm going to give you a little bonus for marketing. I'm going to send you some money back.
Exactly.
So by tracing diamonds, I don't think people have to be very afraid. First of all, they cannot use the technology. That's number one.
Exactly. You've got a choice.
Number two, it might be working the other way. So if De Beers has a marketing program, it says, when you sell every diamond you sell of mine, I'm going to give you X dollars for it. And then you get entitled to that money I wouldn't call it a kickback, but you get entitled to that money, the bonus, okay? A sales bonus every time you move a diamond. So technology is really opening up a lot of opportunities for the marketing and the selling and the doing of diamonds that we may not even think about yet. There's a lot of stuff out there. Okay. Now, this tracer is owned by De Beers.
Yep.
What is that? Well, let me put it to you another way. Will Tracer work with colored stones, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires? Will Tracer work with diamonds that are not mined by De Beers? What is this? What's the relationship between Tracer and De Beers? Are you some kind of a high-tech spy system for De Beers? What's the deal here? Let us know. Tell us. Give us the down and skinny here. What's going on? Yeah.
It's a great question. So, and like a typical Martin question, there's about 9 questions hidden in one question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can break it down.
No, I got it. So let me start at the simple one. I mean, first of all, Tracer is not a high-tech spy system for De Beers at all. And I think we've done quite well to convince people of that. We have our ISO 27001 certification. We're a separate legal entity with a separate office. We're separately structured, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we feel fairly comfortable. We've had 1 million audits in our life. Like we're fairly comfortable that Tracer is independent in that respect, independent enough. We are well-governed and well-run, and we feel comfortable in that world. That being said, though, I mean, I don't come from the diamond industry historically, and if you said to me, let's go out and take your money and start a traceability platform, I'd laugh at you. There's no way. The diamond industry is an immensely complex place, and it has taken a really long time to get to this standard and investment. And the only way we would have ever survived that is if you had a company like De Beers funding it. There were moments in time where I was saying, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, and you should stop it because you could spend your money somewhere else. And I think we should challenge those things. But I think, fortunately, if you look at where we are and what we've achieved, I think we've kind of earned our place. So you do need somebody that's going to be able to go the long distance on this journey. Otherwise, you end up in a space where it's not sustainable and it gets withdrawn, and that's a problem. It has to be sustainable. So then, but the real question is, what is our relationship with De Beers? So in the first instance, we originally launched Tracer to be the open industry platform for the industry, by the industry, to be independent, et cetera. And that was always the intention, and that intention actually hasn't changed. But what we did find 2 and a bit years in, around about when I took over, that we tried to do too much. We tried to land too far ahead. There are some foundational elements that need to be in place. And so, I describe it as a ship that we built. We threw it in the ocean, big splashes. Everybody got really excited. The ship was kind of listing a little bit, had maybe a hole, the engine wasn't working, it didn't have any fuel. So when I took over, we brought the ship into harbour and we put some ropes across and we steadied it. And that phase was let's make sure it works for De Beers, which, to be fair, if you're owned by De Beers and you can't make this thing work for their production, what chance do you have anywhere else? And I think that was the right decision. So a year into that, we launched Tracer, and actually it was about a week or 2 before Russia invaded Ukraine that we launched the version of Tracer that is running today that we felt like is the right foundational platform for the industry. Obviously, the geopolitical events did accelerate the work that we're doing, and Bruce Cleaver at the time, the CEO, then sort of doubled down on saying, we're going to use Tracer, guys, we're going to get behind Tracer. About a year later, we announced that we're opening Tracer to the industry. So what that meant is we're bringing on other producers, but also non-De Beers customers, so non-site holder manufacturers. We've also worked really hard to bring on other producers and bring on others. So where it stands today is a very good example. We have 3 or 4 other producers actually on the platform. A few of them I can't talk about. But Mountain Province is a really nice example. The diamonds that Mountain Province mines in their Guachaque mine, their share goes into Antwerp and is sold by Bonus. We've put high-speed scanning equipment in there. They've got an Innovseed machine, and they scan those diamonds and load them onto the Tracer platform. So we are already working on other routes to market. We have other producers in Southern Africa that are investing in the technology and already joining. So I think from an independence point of view, Tracer is definitely not just for De Beers production. Obviously, the vast majority of our diamonds are De Beers diamonds, and we've been very lucky to have access to that. And obviously, a lot of our customers are site holders, but they're big manufacturers. So that's kind of where we are today. That being said, though, we've always said that independence is a bit of a journey. And so I described already our governance process. So it was important that we felt like Tracer could stand on its own 2 feet, because you can't be independent if you can't stand on your own 2 feet. And we feel like we can do that now in terms of our governance, our ISO certifications, etc. And Al Cook's actually announced a few times that they're going to look to reduce their ownership in Tracer. And so we're starting the process now for Tracer to become an independent company that has external investors coming in, which will make the board more independent, more of the decision-making independent. But what I want to stress is that I think at least over the last 2 and a bit years when we talk, things do take time, but we never sit here and have these conversations and say, yeah, we did that and we took it away. Whenever we do something, we want to make sure it's done and we move on. Because I think often in industry in general, there are a lot of things that kind of come and go, and that loses the trust. And we've been very consistent on when we say we're going to introduce something into the market, we do it and we stick by it. moving Tracer to be an independent company is a big step because so far it's been well supported by the industry and by De Beers. We need to make sure that continues, and we have very good relationships with all of the big players in the industry now that we feel like we can do that. So I think it's our key customers will tell you that it used to be something they asked us 2 years ago. They feel far more comfortable with it, but it is a natural step of Tracer to become more independent, I think.
And so, like, how does Tracer make money?
Yeah, so we didn't is the short answer. The first for quite a while. See previous statement about how it's helpful to have somebody supporting you. But how it works today is we have a sort of a platform fee, which means that we provide infrastructure for you to load all your diamonds on, do all the transfers and stuff, and so you pay a sort of a monthly fee for that. And then Tracer's actually, from a stone point of view, is free all the way through right till the tail end of polished. So as a producer, you can load as many diamonds on the platform. You don't pay a penny. As a manufacturer, you can register your rough. You can do the splits. You can do the polished. All the way up, you can send it to the laboratory, get it back, get it graded. You can take all of those diamonds to that point, and you're not paying us a penny on the diamond. As soon as you want to take the data that we've gathered through the journey and you want to use that data, that's when you'll pay us a fee. It's early days for us. We only started charging this year, so and it's an important part of independence. You've got to show that you can at least wash your face in terms of the costs. But we do think that may evolve, and our view is that the further down the value chain, the better, because that's where money is created in the diamond industry. It's created at the consumer, but it'll take us a little bit of time to get there. And the concept that you can basically register all of your polished inventory and not pay us a cent, I think is really important for the readiness of the industry. And then when you want to put that into, you want to transfer it to another retailer, you want to use the story, then you unlock the diamond and you pay us a fee.
That's interesting. So it's a sort of like a software as a service when you use it.
Kind of like software as a service when you use it. Pay-per-click model, so to speak.
Pay-per-click. It's sort of like how we Sarin charges also.
Very similar, very similar.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Now, so maybe Tracer's for sale? De Beers is for sale? Tracer's for sale?
Yeah, I think there's
should be drinking some whiskey there.
I mean, I think if anything is clear in the diamond industry is change is here to stay. So yes, De Beers is for sale. Anglo American in their portfolio review is divesting from De Beers. I think it makes sense. De Beers doesn't really fit in the portfolio. I think from a Tracer perspective, yeah, maybe our goal is that we sort of spin out before De Beers spins out. But as you can tell, there's a lot going on all at the same time. And that also comes back to that importance about consistency. If we're going to do something, we do it properly, we make it clear, because what the diamond industry doesn't need is more disruption and more uncertainty. We must be very clear on what we're doing, and we don't try and do something or say something if we're not comfortable that we can achieve that thing. And that's also why maybe sometimes over the last few years we've been quite slow to really shout and scream about the things we can do, because we want to make sure we're not too disruptive.
Does Tracer have competitors?
Yeah, I answer this question in a couple of ways. I mean, I think on paper you could say we have a few competitors. Most of the people that you would traditionally see as competitors, we're actively working with, because Tracer's core goal is to be the data infrastructure for the industry. That means we can interoperate and share data in a secure way, and that data again is not owned by Tracer; it's owned by those that own the diamonds, and it can be used in any program. And the example is, you take the GIA. They have a diamond origin report. They've had that for a while, and they have a couple of other things. But they work for us as well, because they want to take origin and provenance from Tracer and use it on their certificates. And if that's what the consumer wants, or that's what the retailer wants, we're more than happy for that data to flow, because it's not our data to block and to control. Our collaboration with Serene that we've spoken about quite a bit is about getting data and using data. But also, if you want to take Tracer diamonds and you want to push them through the Serene diamond journey, and that's what you want, then great. Let the people that can innovate best in the downstream work. So Lexus, a couple of others, I think we work with basically everyone. And you could see them as competitors, but that's actually just options and choices in the market, right? And the more we can allow our customers to have as many options as possible, I think the faster we're going to get to the goal of having traceability for all the diamonds in the world.
How does RapNet use Tracer?
So it should use it more, I should say, while I'm on the platform. But basically, manufacturers, when they list their diamonds on RapNet, if they're Tracer diamonds, which a fair percentage of the diamonds should be Tracer diamonds, if you think about the percentage of the world's diamonds we have on our platform, then they'll share that information when uploading it on the RapNet platform, and your team can then use the API to check and validate that the diamond is the diamond, and then they will list it as a Tracer diamond. And then if you're looking to buy diamonds on the market and you go on RapNet, you can search, there's a little field at the bottom there, and you can search for Tracer diamonds, and then that the origin and the provenance of this diamond, the RJC claims, etc., are something that Tracer's done the work to build those up on the platform and put them downstream. And you would think that we would see a lot more of that, because again, the conversation of like, well, what about these diamonds, et cetera, et cetera. I think we have all of the connections in place today to scale this up to make sure that a retailer and a consumer knows what they're buying. And I think the moment they start asking more, you'll all of a sudden see that percentage increasing, because there is not a capacity problem. It's more of an intention to be able to do that.
So I think the problems with the market to get used to this is start actually using it as more and more consumers come along and say, hey, where's my diamond coming from? And don't forget, I think De Beers' recent announcement that they're going to tell you which country it comes from helps clear the area quite a bit. And actually, it doesn't matter. I can sell you a box of diamonds, and one is from Botswana, one is from Canada, one is from South Africa. And what do I care? And I can know, but each diamond then gets that individualized. So essentially what we're doing is we're individualizing parcels of diamonds.
Essentially, and it doesn't change the way diamonds are traded. I don't see any issue with that.
It opens it up, because now I don't have to have one controller.
Exactly
You can have a rough diamond and it's wandering around the market, and it doesn't matter, because
Exactly.
when it
bring
hits
back
that
on.
factory, boom, it gets matched.
Which is really important, right? And you take Dubai as a hub. We're looking at bringing some scanning equipment into Dubai, so you could then bring the parcel in, you could rescan it, and then you could create a new parcel from that, and that just helps, because now you're maintaining where things are going, right?
It's Lego pieces.
Costs you very little, pretty seamless in terms of what it looks like. And I think at the end of the day, my concern is that if we are waiting for all consumers to ask, it's too late. If a consumer walks into the store and they go, "Where's it from?" and you don't know, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, so you're going to want to know that,
So you're going to want to be ready to know that, I think, sooner rather than later.
Tracer work with rubies, emeralds, and sapphires.
So I did ignore that part.
Yeah,
of
I
your
know you
question.
did. I saw you ignoring that stuff. I like to catch you.
Testing your memory.
I
now.
read a little note over there. I can see what I'm doing here. I know this kind of question.
Testing your memory. So Trace is interesting. So we've always focused on the higher value stones. So we work on certified stones, which means we don't do melee today. I get asked, when will you do melee? And melee is a bit different. So I come from a world where I've done traceability on other things like cobalt and copper and other commodities. And it's different depending on the commodity you use. And I think in the diamond industry, in my mind, you've really got three layers of diamonds. You've got three types in traceability language. You've got sort of certified stones, those that go into a laboratory, get a certificate, get an inscription, etc. That's our focus area. You get parcel goods, those that don't go to a lab, don't get certified, sort of lower quality goods, but still decent sizes. They can be 20, 30, 40, 50 points. And then you get melee, traditionally. Melee for me is more like a liquid. It's not single stone traceability. It's just too much of it, and they're too similar, and it's just too difficult at the volume scale. So, for example, De Beers, to get those 2.8 million diamonds, to get the amount of data they need to get us down to the 1 carat polished, 50 point in the polished, they have 11 high-speed scanning machines in Botswana. That's the volume that they have. If you were to drop that down by another notch or another notch, you're doubling the number of machines. It gets crazy. So anyway, needless to be saying, from a tracer perspective, our first thing is we got to get it right. We got to know that we do it right. And I think we're getting more comfortable. And then there's a choice. Do we go down into melee to sort of complete and the parcel goods? Do we go across into other stones, emeralds and rubies, etc.? Do we go into commodities like platinum? We are for now still owned by Anglo American, that produces a third of the world's platinum. Do we go into gold? Because I also am at pains to remind people that consumers don't buy diamonds; they buy diamond jewelry. And so, if we're gonna make a great story about the center stone, well, what about the melee? What about the gold? What about the platinum? It's a bit of a journey there. So we have a choice. Fortunately, we don't have to make that choice today, because I think there's still work to be done in the diamond industry. We've got a couple of milestones coming up, March, maybe September next year. We've got to make sure that Tracer. We've been given the privilege to be able to be here for such a long time. We have to make sure that we're still here to support the diamond industry, the natural diamond industry. And then, we'll see where we go from there. I think there's a couple of interesting options thereafter. And what I like to tell people is what we've actually solved is we have companies that compete with each other using our platform that trust us. That's fundamental. So if we can take that and move it into other industries, I think we'll be in a good place to help other industries. And maybe gold and platinum and melee would be the right place to start, rather than maybe gems or rubies.
How would you trace gold? I mean, gold is, is there a special DNA that a specific gold bar would have or something? Or it's just, it's like an auditing trail? What are you going to do there?
It's quite interesting, because I think this comes back down to the same as diamonds, right? There's no magic wand that says I can pick a diamond off the floor and know where it comes from, right? It comes back to physics and technology, etc. And I think gold is no different. So gold for me is we talk about fungible and non-fungible. So diamonds in this world are non-fungible. The diamond on Tracer is the diamond on Tracer, and it's followed the whole way through. I think somebody at the conference today said, that rough diamond out the mine is the diamond the consumer will buy, right? Might get split into 2 or 3, but that's what's going to happen. Melee is, in my mind, is fungible. You could swap the two in the bag and you wouldn't know the difference. Gold is a bit like that. So how you would have to do it is more in a book and claim model that says, I'm a gold producer, so I have 10,000 tons of gold. So that's a lot of gold. I've got a ton of gold, so I put that on the platform and I register that and I put all of my credentials against it. And then you draw down as you sell into people. So you're basically just doing a sort of a metal accounting system to make sure you know where it comes from. And it is obviously not as exact, but it's a bit like renewable energy. So if you're in the UK, you can say to your utility provider, I want to only buy 100% renewable energy. So what they'll do is they'll make sure that the energy you're using comes from a renewable source, solar or wind or whatever you choose. Realistically, the electrons that are coming into your house, they don't know where they're coming from. They're probably coming from a nuclear power station or a coal-fired power station, but they're balancing it out to make sure that the renewable that was produced over here is what you're buying. That's kind of what gold or platinum is.
Compensatory kind of an environment.
Exactly, which you'd have to do for oil and gas as well. So the only way that you can do these things because you can't do it at a particle level. It's just not possible.
But let's go back to rubies.
So rubies,
You got a ruby, right now, Burmese, and the labs are coming up with I don't know if this is science or art or Mickey Mouse, but you look at some of the gems and they do have characteristics, sometimes even more than diamonds. And a lot of the certification of colored stones has been on origin, okay? Yeah. So now let's say I have a ruby. And why can't I feed it into Tracer? I can look at the dimensions. I can scan it, maybe. Maybe we can even get some kind of a chemical kind of a analysis there. Would that be something that you think would be doable with Tracer?
I mean, absolutely. I think it's easily transferable across into other commodities, and something like a ruby where it is very similar in a supply chain sense to that. I think there's a couple of things that you said. I think the main thing for us is about focus. So there's no reason why that isn't the next thing. It's just that we're not doing the next thing for the next at least 6 months until we sort out that there's a lot going on in the natural diamond industry, and I think we all need to focus on not only growing the pie, but stopping the pie from shrinking in the natural diamond industry. And I think we've got a part to play there. I think then you're talking about this sort of chemical composition, and there are a couple of different ways of doing it. I'm not an expert, but rubies, I do understand, are better leaning towards knowing the origin of them, because I think the fields with which they come from, the countries, etc., they do have unique properties in them. I think you have to use ablation, which is essentially you've got to nick a little bit off the side, and you've got to do some testing on it. And that's a little bit problematic when you've got a precious stone. Yeah, exactly. So so there's a little bit of that. And then I just think also, I'm not an expert in the value chain, but it's one of those things where you probably just got to look at it and go, what you do need to make sure, and the book and claim example on metals is the right thing is, by doing this, are you adding value and adding a degree of certainty, or are you just whitewashing what's there? So what we don't want to do is introduce a solution that basically just says you can just tell me whatever you want and we're just going to trust you. And then what we're doing is Tracer, and all we're doing is we're adding our credibility to your claim, and that so we would have to do a little bit of analysis on where we work with.
Well, maybe it's a bit like GemFair, where you're looking at GemFair, where you're really tracing stuff from the artisanal sector. Yeah, and I'm just wondering how GemFair would eventually work itself into. So for me, also great, really interesting.
And we've spoken about this before, I think, in some of the previous conferences. I mean, I think the GemFair model is something that needs to be replicated for all artisanal miners in all of the world. I think it is absolutely fundamental. Tracer works with GemFair to trace their diamonds because we provide that piece that they don't need to provide. But I think scaling out a model like GemFair that in an absolute sentence says, can we make sure that artisanal miners get fair price? It's really as simple as that.
Right.
And then you build that on. There's no reason why a brand doesn't want to buy GemFair diamonds.
You have to know where the artisanal's coming from, too. You're afraid it could be smuggled in from some kind of horrible place.
There's risk, right? There's risk. And I think it depends on the geography and it depends on where you are. Some are higher risk, some are lower risk. I think the GemFair model, though, is, it's a really, really good place to start to support artisanal miners.
What's with this? GIA says they have an ability to scan, but it's not like a scan of the rough. It's more like some kind of I'll use DNA, okay? Yeah. And then if you send the diamond, and the rough goes through 50 hands, and it gets polished, and it gets and then when you give it in, if you have that number of that scan, they can then come back and tell you this diamond came from Botswana or wherever. Does that work? Is that something that's out there? How does that? Well, maybe you don't need Tracer if that works all the time, but... Yeah. Because that's another way to be able to tell. You won't know where it was manufactured. Yeah. But you'll know what source mine it came from. Is that technology real?
Yeah. I'm not an expert. in that specific technology. But what I would say is that it is definitely possible, and I'm pretty sure it works. I think the challenge is scale. So I think, what you'd probably find is, the diamond has to be sent away and sent back again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If that's the case, you've got a very specialized machine that maybe you can't put in every single producer, so it's got to be in a facility, or maybe there's specific skills or resources that you need to do it. What invariably ends up happening is you can't scale that solution. And so it's an option, definitely, you can definitely do it, but how does that apply to 3 million, 4 million, 10 million diamonds? If you look at De Beers, per site, it's 250,000 diamonds that are coming on the platform. How many people, how many machines, the time, and the manufacturers in the industry always complain about time. If they lose 2-3 days in the manufacturing process, that's money to them, right? So I think that what they've done there, and I think there's a couple of other people that are doing a similar thing, is really, really, really good, but it's definitely for a smaller volume of stones. Trace's goal is to provide the perfect balance between scale and certainty. So, how do we make sure that it's accessible and scalable while meeting a certain standard that we're comfortable with? And I think that's the balance that we've managed to achieve over the last 2 years.
How much do you plan to charge these retailers, whoever is going to be taking the data? And you're saying to me the manufacturer doesn't have to pay, right? But after the manufacturer, if someone then, I guess it's like point of sale to retail or to the jeweler you mentioned?
Yeah.
So when does that get triggered that you got to pay?
So today, it is the manufacturer that pays. If you're going to transfer, when the manufacturer sells that diamond onto a retailer and they want to transfer it with a Tracer ID and all of the information and story, then they'll unlock it and they'll pay Tracer. It's a very, very, very small percentage of the value of the diamond. It's sort of like 0.3, 0.4, 0.5%.
Is it in the value of the diamond or per stone?
It just works out like that, but it's a fixed fee. So I think today...
Can you disclose what it is?
Yeah,
Is
so
it
today,
diamond?
like a 1 carat, it's on a sliding scale, like a lab. So
The
smaller
size,
the size.
It's like
So
a
a 1 to 1.3 carat, I think, is about $25. To give
Whoa,
you an idea.
$25!
Yeah, we get that reaction sometimes. But yeah, and this is our starting position. This is where we are. Obviously, as we scale up, then there's obviously more
Price will go down
opportunity.
as you scale up, hopefully.
We've got to find the right balance. But also the goal then is to say, because we're transferring the asset to the retailer, because the retailer is closer to the consumer, could we then allow the manufacturer to transfer that asset and the retailer picks up the fee because they're close to the consumer?
Yeah.
So we can evolve this as we go. But again, we're doing this in a kind of a methodical way to kind of start.
But once they buy it, that's it.
Once
I
they
have to
buy
pay
it,
you
it's
again,
theirs.
right?
It's their data forever. There's none of
So
this.
whoever the data
hidden
is at,
lock-
you got it. You're going to keep charging every step.
Exactly right.
Okay, that would be, this is a comforting thought somewhere in there. It's like a GIA certificate.
Very similar. You buy it once, you got it, and you got access to that information, etc.
And you keep the data forever?
That's the plan.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not really a problem these days with
Storage
cloud
is
technology and
relatively
storage.
cheap,
So storage is
and you can
relatively
pull it
cheap.
out.
Yeah. I don't think that's too much of an issue. And I think this comes back down to sustainability, right? If we're gonna build this origin and we're gonna build what it is, we do need to be around forever because that's how long we want the natural diamond industry to be around, right? So we've got to be around as long as that.
So you're in the rough service business.
How do you mean?
I mean, like, people provide services. Some people clean the rough. Some people auction the rough. Some people put pound down, like Rapaport puts diamonds up there. You're in the best part of the diamond industry where you don't have to own the inventory.
Yeah,
and you're providing
so-
a service. I'm not attacking you on this. I'm
No,
saying
no,
that's a great business.
I mean, I think we're a data service. So
Yeah.
the way we look at it is our job is to help the industry standardize. It's always interesting. We work with laboratories, and you get you'd think that we have standardized data formats, but it changes, and like every one uses a slightly different. Is there a diamond industry standard for shape? Well, no, not really. There's quite a few different
Well,
ways.
GI goes crazy with that stuff. I mean, you can
Exactly. So
modified, not modified cushions.
So what we want to make sure is like it doesn't matter where you buy the diamond from. It doesn't matter who you sell the diamond
Sure.
to. There's standardized ways of presenting that data, and that's what we do. And then obviously there's a degree of verification services. So we have algorithms that run. We work with third parties, so we can enable Serene to do a verification on the platform, Lexus to do a verification on the platform.
That's good.
So we're more like a data services company, I'd say, within the diamond industry.
So where do you live?
So I'm based in London. I'm South African by birth and background. Yeah, but I've been there for about 5 years now with my wife and 2 kids.
Two kids, a wife, and everything. You're settled into this.
Yeah.
So looking back, would you do it again?
Tracer specifically. This
Oh,
job.
yeah.
This job. Definitely, absolutely. It is hard. It is frustrating. It is difficult. It is challenging. It's one of the most complex jobs I've ever had. But I think what makes it amazing is all of those things are good because it's challenging, and I'm at the time of my life where I want to be challenged. But I think the reason I would do it again is the diamond industry is actually a very nice place. when you get kind of past it all, it is relationships and it's people and it is family, and it's a really good place to be. And I've learned an immense amount. So I come from a technology background. I come from an engineering background. So I understand a lot of those things. I worked on the Karowe mine. I was the electrical engineer there. So I built that mine. So I know diamond mining. I know the supply chain. As I said, I worked in the Congo. And so, I understand a lot of what is the pieces of the diamond industry. This job has gotten me closer to retailers, closer to the manufacturers, more work in India. And then obviously with the advent of sanctions, it's got me closer to governments, which has been not what I expected, but a huge learning curve for me. So
Don't trust those governments.
Would,
they all got different plans,
Well, it's
never trust a government.
This is it. Like for me, the exposure and the learning has been fantastic, and actually, my job specifically, and I think Trace has been welcomed in the industry. We've built a good reputation and brand, and I'm really proud of the team for that. So yeah, I would probably regret it, but yeah, I would do it again.
Are you ready to move to Dubai now?
I think my wife would happily move to Dubai. The weather's a little bit better here than it is in London. But
what do you think about Dubai as a diamond center? What's your views about that? Do you think it's just going to keep growing and booming?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Look, I haven't been around in the industry long enough, I think, to see the transition from from sort of an Amsterdam, Antwerp, Dubai, these transitions. So it's a bit new for me. But I think of what Dubai has done from a country kind of point of view, a city, from where it was 50 years ago to now is pretty immense. I think, having been here, this is my second time only to Dubai. I can definitely see the amount of time, effort, and energy they're investing in these things. I think is definitely going to help. Geographically, they seem to be well placed, given that most of the diamonds are mined in Southern Africa, and then they end up in India. Dubai is a sort of a logical point. And most of the people I speak to are happy to work here, and it seems easy to work here. So I think that's a good model. And then again, I think that if traceability is what we think it is, and I think if the trend is going to continue, the ability to use this hub as a digitization center is important, because you have the opportunity to just leapfrog technologies. And as a South African, the example I like to use is there was a point in time when I was younger that, the cell phone density, as in the number of cell phones per capita in South Africa, was higher than the United States of America. And the reason for that is nobody had landline phones. So they just skipped all the way ahead and went to the other one. And as is the industry, we start creating these centers and building these environments, I think we need to be leapfrogging and using the technology. So I think Dubai is pretty well placed for that. Antwerp, like I mentioned bonus before, they still play their part. Surat as well. But yeah, I think it's exciting to see what's going to happen in the next maybe 12 to 18 months in the diamond industry.
We're almost done. How about AI? How does AI play into this?
So I used this example actually earlier. So I'll give you two things. I mean, we've spoken a lot about algorithms and that we use. We're not flashy about it, but it's important, right? You want to match stones together. You want to pull them through. That's definitely AI. There's lots of other use cases, I think, in supply chain for supply chain efficiency and that. But I think that's something we'll get to. The AI story that I'll tell you actually is more of a cautionary tale. So, we talk about lab grown and we talk about natural, right? And there's a whole nother podcast to discuss my personal views on the topic. But people always say like, well, what do you think? And I say, well, the interesting thing is it doesn't matter what I think, right? Because I'm already in the industry. The question is what do the young consumers think? And I say to them, you must understand that they're not going to ask you and me. They're going to ask ChatGPT, and they're going to ask Gemini, and they're going to ask these tools. And so if you go on ChatGPT today, you must have it on your phone. I'm sure you use it all the time. And you write in, should I buy a lab-grown or a natural diamond? And you ask ChatGPT, because I can tell you that's what consumers are doing. The answer is really interesting. It'll say to you that if you're looking for a low-cost, ethical choice, lab-grown diamond is the answer. If you're looking for a rare choice that will hold its value, natural is the answer. And somewhere, that word ethical was taken out of the natural piece and is put into the lab-grown piece. And I'm not even here to debate whether that's right or wrong. The point is that's what AI is doing to the diamond industry, is we're not in that conversation because I don't think we're fundamentally engaging at the right level to make us in that conversation. And so when people talk about AI, and I think it's good, there is a lot of opportunity for AI, but I think we're missing a trick in the natural diamond industry where we are not influencing that conversation. And that is the place where I would have gone to my dad or a friend and asked him what I should do on a diamond. They're going to go to ChatGPT. This is what they're going to ask, and they're going to get the answer, and they're going to action it accordingly. And if we can't get the ethical word back into natural diamonds on ChatGPT, we're not doing our jobs.
So that's great. So what we're dealing with over here is a level of source certification that enhances social responsibility in the diamond industry by forcing us to compete in the ethical basis. So maybe synthetics are telling you got to, and whether or not synthetics are ethical is another question.
Different discussion.
Okay? But we now have to be more ethical in the diamond industry because of perceived competition, perceived ethicalness, ethical competition.
Yep.
And now that drives everybody right into your lap. That's it, baby.
Well,
Here we are. Source certification. Run to Tracer if you want to save your business from those terrible synthetic people. Not just the diamonds, the people being
The
synthetic.
people. Yeah, and I think, the job should be easier if that was true, and the job is still quite hard. But I think even if we do that, and I think that is what we should be doing, is using the technologies, it's still taking all of that data, and somebody's got to be telling that story. And the ChatGPT example is an interesting one because where does ChatGPT get its data from? It doesn't get it from the encyclopedia on your shelf. It gets it from the internet, right? And if we're digitizing the natural diamond story, that's the way ChatGPT is going to listen. And so that's the last mile of what we need to do. And Tracer is just a tool to help some really smart, innovative people in the downstream be able to do that at the end of the day.
An important tool, a vital tool. And look, guys, Tracer's the future because knowledge and transparency is the future. And when a consumer buys a diamond and they give it to someone they love, they want that diamond to be the best diamond, not just in shape, size, color, and clarity, but also a diamond that makes the world a better place, proven to you by Tracer. Thank you very much. It's been fun. We've had a good talk.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Martin.
We've had a pretty good talk.
I always enjoy it.
You'll get the other talks with you just like that. All right.